So we have,
Would you like to do the pledge?
I should do the pledge, even though it's not a full meeting. We should.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we have 3 departments here today. We've got Veterans, Highway, and Building. Are you ready, my dear?
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. So we'll go ahead and start with the budget. Obviously, that's why we're here. So last year, our budget was at $76,700. I have dropped that by a little over 8%. We're at $70,700. Although I do plan on coming in under that. As I wrap my head around this budget, I have FM experience, but not in this. But through this year, I will wrap my head around this, get us to where we need to be. Not that there's a lot of fat, but there's some things here I think we can move around. We currently spend approximately $2,000 on our Chapter 115 recipients every month, and 75% of that does come back to the town through the state. Some of the things I'll look at for next year are the fuel, medications, and the doctor's appropriations that we have currently. In the last 3 years, we haven't really used those, so I'll probably bring those numbers down. So pending any questions.
I actually had a question. It wasn't about the numbers, it was about what exactly is the ordinary allowance? Like, what does that entail?
So ordinary allowance, some of the Chapter 115 recipients will get Medicare B or D, and some of it is housing. The housing comes under ordinary allowance.
Okay. And my only other question is, not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but with all other budgets going up, to see a budget going down is, I like it, but is it sustainable? Like, is that something that?
It's, so yes, as long as, my personal salary is less than it has been in the past, and that's just because of where I am in my retirement. So my hours are less, if you will. So you'll see a drop in the budget for that.
Okay.
And then some of the other budgets, items that are going down, is just the miscellaneous went down 3,000. And I'll take a close look at that, like I said, throughout the year, figure out if that's where it's gonna stay.
Okay.
But again, the fuel, the medications and the doctors, the veterans clientele that we have right now don't use those services. So if we're not gonna use them, I won't do away with them, I will just bring it down closer to where we think we might be.
Okay. Thank you,
Yep.
that's appreciated.
What is the fuel?
So if they need fuel for actual, like heating fuel.
Oh, for heating stuff,
Yep.
okay.
I have a couple questions. First of all, looking to reduce a budget, is that based on the past couple years that you haven't spent money?
Correct. We haven't had the need to spend it for those certain items. So we don't want to do away with it.
Okay.
Because you never know, like right now we're not doing any kind of, none of our clients need fuel assistance. That's not to say that they won't need it next year, but perhaps we can get that number closer to a more relative number.
Well, and again, I guess too, is some of these past numbers for the past couple of years, has that been impacted by COVID? For those numbers, going forward, does that show that you've used less over the past couple of years? Because it's been impacted by COVID and you haven't needed to spend as much funds versus, well, maybe next year, COVID hopefully won't be as it's been, where those funds that you haven't spent will be needed.
I'll take that into account, but I don't plan on cutting, I won't cut my feet out from under me, put it that way.
Okay.
I'm not going to cut enough just to get it to a number that makes the 3 of you happy. That's not my plan. My plan is just to get to, with a budget, you don't want to have anything that's way above what we have, just so you don't go over. You want to be as close to accurate as you can.
Yeah.
That's my intent.
Well, what makes me happy is that you have a budget that provides needed services and quality services for our veterans.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely confident with this 8% cut that I will still provide everything they need.
Well, I mean, I guess in looking at this, it looks like in 2020 and 2021, 15,000 was budgeted for medications,
Correct.
and very little of it was used. What does the medications entail? Does that help with co-pays, or?
The medications themselves, yes.
Okay,
And right now, we don't have anyone that's requiring that service. Not to
Okay.
say that tomorrow we won't, but right now we do not.
okay. I mean, when you're budgeting 15,000 and you're not even using 1,000 of it, I can see where that's able to be lowered.
And I guess next would be, you spoke to that you have less hours now, okay? So with you having less hours, is another staff person gonna be needed to provide the services at those less hours? You know, is there somewhere that, again, I wanna make sure that we're providing adequate services that are needed, so I wanna make sure that we're not missing something just by cutting back you less hours, which is great because it's less payroll, if you will.
Yep.
But however, too, I want to make sure that we have the needed staff to meet our requirements.
Yeah, understood. At this point, I do not need any assistance. I'm accomplishing everything that's required. I'm pretty much working 5 days a week, if you will, not full days, but I'm accomplishing everything I need to. I'm also working with the South Hadley and East Hampton VSO to make sure that I'm learning from him at the same time, but helping him out also. So yeah, right now, everything is covered. If I need assistance, I will let you know, and there's still budget room for, if I needed to hire someone, there's budget room in there.
And please do, I don't want you to feel like being overwhelmed that, I told the select board I could do this, and if you need additional help, please
Let us know.
let us know.
Yeah, appreciate it, but I think I'm good, yep.
I don't have any other questions.
Just so the board knows, we've been fortunate. We don't have a large caseload of veterans requiring assistance through this program.
Do you know offhand how many veterans we have that utilize the program?
4
4.
right now. We've had 5, 6, and 7 in the past. We're down to 4 right now, and it'll probably stay that way for a little while. The previous VSO did outreach. There's not a lot eligible out there, which is, we're fortunate in Granby because of that, because of the income level. We don't have a lot that qualify. So this job being part-time is adequate.
Okay. Thank you.
Why aren't they using the medication, co-pays? Is it because they have other health services?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The option's there if they want it.
Yeah.
And we work with the Council on Aging to determine what's best for them.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm all set.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
see,
you, sir.
quick and easy. That one makes sense to me.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, Mr. DeRocher.
Dave, can you work half the time and do the same amount of work?
I'm afraid not.
Okay.
And can you cut your budget by 8%?
That would be difficult. That would be very challenging.
We don't need to drive on the roads, right?
No.
For seeing them.
Or buy anything. Prices seem to be
Going up everywhere.
going crazy.
All right, whenever you're ready, sir.
I pretty much worked with Chris. We kept it within the 2% as asked. There are a few areas that are a little tight, but
Can you tell us which areas you think are going to be tight?
well, labor for one, I think, trying to be competitive with the private sector is difficult. It's a challenge. I think pretty much every DPW in the area that I'm aware of has got open positions from the top to the bottom. It's getting more challenging to try to find people to come into this profession, and it's difficult. The private sector can change instantly and offer more money. We're locked in for a year or so, so it takes us a long time to adjust. But who knows? If I had a crystal ball, it would be easy, but it's a challenge. And they just keep making it more and more difficult. We used to train some of our own people, for instance. The new CDL regs, we cannot train anybody anymore, send them for a license with our vehicles. They have to go through a school. So all of that is going to add costs into the future, bringing in new employees. But for the most part, I think Chris and I worked through a lot of the material side. I think we've got most of the bases covered, but there's always some curveballs in there.
Price of oil being one.
Those diesel engines with a bad injection pump that we just spent north of $12,000 to get one truck repaired, and there's a class action lawsuit against GM for that right now, but we've got 2 other vehicles with the same pump in it that are ticking time bombs, and there's some proactive things that we're gonna try to look into right now and try to prevent the pumps from grenading and taking the rest of the system out, but it's not a cheap fix.
And what's not in the budget, just so you know, is we are gonna do probably another $100,000 for tree removal. This will be the 3rd year, I think we're doing an appropriation for it. David, I think you said you've gone down from 1,000 trees that needed removal. You're down to about maybe what, 100?
100 right now, but we always find more.
I
When
was
we go
gonna say,
down
you-
the street,
Are you still finding more?
always, everywhere when you get out of the vehicle and start walking around, you go, oh, that one's rotten at the bottom, this one's going, it's got a
I'd say stop looking, but we need the service, so.
I mean, knock on wood, we've gotten much less call-outs recently after storms.
Yes, you're doing the.
We don't hold our breath when the wind blows now and pray that nothing comes down. It seems like the last few windstorms, we've been unscathed, to put it that way. I'm not saying that we won't have any in the future, but we've made a significant dent in the really hazardous trees.
And Dave, that's a good point you make, because it goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in reality, it is something that is there. But because it's not happening, power lines aren't coming down, no one's paying attention.
No one's getting hurt.
Right. Right. And that the reason is because, I would say the preventive maintenance that's going on with the tree removal, so.
Yep.
Are you up at full staff now? Or are you down a guy?
No, we're still short a position. As, like I said, just about every DPW around. But we're gonna try to work on that, and been talking with Chris on that as well.
What we're trying to do, Rick, is we're currently going through the personnel board
Again.
to create a highway foreman position. Because David has indicated that he is looking at retiring in the near future.
No.
No.
Not near future, but at some point.
Well, within 5 years, that's near.
Yeah.
And we need to try and have a succession plan for that department.
Right.
In
Yeah,
addition to all the other departments we're trying to do succession plans to, because
Right, we have a lot.
we have an aging department head
We definitely do that.
staff. And at some point, we're gonna
Not
see
you.
a mass exodus of people going out.
Yeah, especially in our department, we've got 60% of our staff is getting close.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay.
So it's.
You say aging, I say quality, experience.
You can call it, we're gonna have a
That's
mass,
little implicit bias there.
we're gonna have a mass
wrong with
exodus
aging.
of knowledge, let's put it that way,
It
Yeah.
does.
okay? There have been other communities that have gone through it, and they are at a loss now as to
No,
a lot, institutional knowledge has walked out the door.
That's a
Yeah.
great point, Chris, because you can't take, 15, 20 years of service and bring someone in that's been, 3 or 4 and expect them to know the same. It's real.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way.
You know, and I'm seeing a lot across the state, you're seeing it on the emails that are coming out. They're just, all the communities are going through this now.
Right, and the point Dave was making earlier too, where the private sector has the ability to say, how much do you want? Okay, I'll give you that.
Yes.
Because if not, you know, the next company down the road will be willing to pay it, and that's absolutely true.
And we don't have that luxury.
So I was looking at the overtime, the wages there where it went down from 10,000 to 2,000. Are you having to pay more overtime with the lack of the one body? Is that, in other words, is that 2,000 gonna be enough to cover overtime?
The change amount is 2,000.
Right, it went
Change
from
amount,
8
yeah.
to 10.
It went up from 8 to 10.
10, yeah.
We spent 89.73 last year, 7,000 a year before that.
So you think you got it covered? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess the question, if I'm thinking what Rick's thinking is, was the basically 9,000 that you spent last year, was that down a person still?
On overtime?
Yeah,
Yeah, we were still down a person, but that doesn't affect the overtime. Overtime would be if we're called in for trees down, if we're called out for
Or
snowstorms.
if somebody calls out sick, you call in somebody? Or you just go with the two
No,
less?
we go with less,
You
that's
go with
it.
less, okay.
So it's basically for emergencies, only
Emergency
the
only.
overtime.
Okay.
Or sewer calls.
That explains a lot.
You don't have a minimum number you have to cover with, someone's out sick,
Yeah.
they're out sick.
Right,
The project just waits to the next day or down the
Exactly.
road.
So you back up. Okay.
exactly.
What David will do sometimes, though, if it's gonna be a prolonged absence, he'll call in, he has some seasonal people he'll use on occasion. So we'll bring them in at the lower scale rate as part-time seasonal to help fill the gap, just to give him man-hours to be able to assist the other staff members. It's not like he has this large staff and now he has 2 shifts and he can call a regular in on overtime.
Right,
He uses this seasonal part-time people to try and come in and
If you-
supplement.
If you have 3 people, 2 are there, one's out sick, you have no one to call for overtime.
Right.
But like we just talked about, hopefully, knock on wood, there's fewer trees that are gonna be coming down on their own. We're gonna continue to take them on our time during the days, so there'll be less call-outs for that. Our sewer pump stations, we're trying to be proactive and do a lot of repairs to those. We've changed some electronic boards, done some work on the generator, so on and so forth. So we're trying to make sure we do it on normal time, not overtime.
Speaking of
Okay.
that, brings up the question, it's outside your budget, but since you brought it up. How's it been? Because I know we've been, in the past, we struggled with certain waste going down the drain and stuff like that, which was impacting our stations.
We're still seeing a lot of waste in the pump station, but we're not having as many troubles. We rebuilt one pump and closed up the tolerances on the impeller, so it's cutting the fibers a little better. And the other, we replaced the other one with a different style pump that's supposed to be taking up to 2-inch solids and throwing them right through. Both of which have been improved. But we're still having to pump the station out. We've cleaned it just recently. I forget what that bill was, Chris. Do you remember? 1,200 or something like that to pump out the State Street station, and it's probably going to be 2 times a year. So it's a significant expense.
Yeah.
okay, Dave, I have a question about paint and road marking. So in 2020, 2021, in 2022, we budgeted 37,000 for it. 2020 and 2021, we didn't even use the 37,000. We came in under budget. I don't know where we're at this year, comparatively speaking. Is there a specific project coming up that it jumped up to 42?
No, it's cost increases. We're up over I think it's 4 cents a foot now. This year, we've spent, I think, 37,000 on paint and road marking to date. 36.1. And we haven't done any of the cross stop bars. We haven't done any of the stop ahead marks.
Okay.
Those are slower and more expensive. There's probably several $1,000s to do that. I haven't even done that work yet. It's been a real challenge scheduling the contractors with all the rain we had this year. Last year, again, I had, when you said that we didn't spend as much in 1 year there, it was probably due to the fact that we had difficulty getting the contractors in. It was late in the season. They didn't have enough time to get it all done. Even this year, I started very early, had them do half, and then had them come back and do the remaining half, but we never got to the stop bars. So I'll do those in the spring. And again, I'm trying to forecast with a dart on the wall where the cost is gonna be next year. Everything's going crazy. Paint is in short supply. I wasn't even sure we'd be able to paint all the lines this year because at the beginning of the season, they were talking about supply chain issues and not being able to purchase the paint.
Okay.
And also, just so you know, one of the large firms that did painting services ended up not being allowed to perform services in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah, they were disbarred for a while, but they're reopened under a new name now, so there is still 2 contractors, but there's just basically 2 vendors in the state
That are allowed, that can do the entire state?
that do the
Yes.
long lines, yeah.
Yes,
How does anybody ever get scheduled? Okay.
They are very efficient. I mean, they'll come in and do the whole town in a night or 2.
Well, some of the bigger cities and stuff, or the
On
state
the
has their own, actually, they have their own equipment to do things like
Yeah,
that.
yes.
It's a
Mass
smaller
DOT
towns,
has their
smaller
own
cities,
equipment
yeah.
as well.
Right.
Some of their own, but they contract a lot
Yeah.
out as well.
Okay.
and also that's what's not gonna be in the budget is, I think we're planning another $200,000 to supplement the Chapter 90 funds for road repair and regrading replacement. Okay, so we are supplementing our Chapter 90 allocation to try and address our aging roads also at the same time.
Yeah, Chapter 90 seems to be going down instead of up.
It hasn't changed a bit. And
Yeah.
there was a big article, I don't know if you saw the Susan Bump, the state auditor, did a big article about how it's really, it hurts the western part of the state, the way the monies are distributed even more. It's sort of discriminatory against us. The big cities get everything, they get all of the extra funding, and then even the Chapter 90 is weighted heavily towards population and trip generation, not only road miles. We still have to maintain the road, whether there's 1 car on it or 20 cars on it, it's still weathering and deteriorating. But there was a big article, and she was advocating for more money for Chapter 90 because it's a good way to sort of, it's the best way we have to distribute it fairly across the state. And from what I'm hearing, I don't know if Chris has heard anything different at the MMA, but there doesn't appear to be much appetite to even increase it at all. So Chapter 90's been almost stagnant for 20 years, and I've mentioned that in my annual report this year again. But asphalt's gone from $20 a ton to $70 a ton, so that's.
So we're gonna increasingly have to
We keep
offset
doing
that cost?
more with less, basically, every year. And thankfully, Chris has been able to help us out a little bit with town funds. But there was only the one increase. The governor went up to 300 million from 200 million. That's distributed to, across the entire state. But that was a one-time 50% increase. But that didn't even make up all the cuts we saw during the big dig. The Chapter 90 was cut from 200 million down to 50. So we really took a hit in the early 2000s on our roads, and we're just climbing out of that hole now.
Chris, if that's the case, is there a reason that we just don't put this as part of the budget?
Those are special articles.
What makes it a special article?
Anything over, right now, the Finance Committee says anything over, I think it's 15,000, they want to see as a separate article to be addressed by town meeting.
Even though we know it's something that's going to have to be done every year? Okay.
And I don't have a problem with that, because that gives us the chance for us to continue to keep it in front of people that we're not getting enough aid from the state
Right.
to maintain this. So you always have that gentle reminder when we have that article, that if it's put in his budget, it's buried into a $800,000 budget, and you don't get to be able to talk or identify some of the issues we're having.
That's fair, okay.
Puts it up there, I get it.
Just so you know where we came from, our PCI, Pavement Condition Index, started when we first started pavement management in around 2003. It was around 70, which, not too bad. That's the average pavement condition. It went down to about a 42, and now we're climbing back up into the 50s because of the extra funding, and we're doing a little bit more proactive stuff and trying to get it under control with crack sealing and trying to stretch every penny.
Yeah, there are some roads that are a little worse for wear.
Yeah, I mean, there's some roads that haven't been touched in over 20 years. New Ludlow Road is a perfect example of that. We keep patching it, spray patching it, crack sealing it. But there's others that keep popping up that need it first. Morgan Street's probably gonna be one that's gonna be on the high list this year. It's falling apart rather quickly, but
Is it because of the increase in traffic?
Morgan Street's been a while since we've done that. New Ludlow Road's been over 20 years. You're not gonna get that kind of life out of pavements any longer. If you get 15 to 18, we're doing really, really well. And then you better plan on a mill and overlay, or at least some major improvement, otherwise it'll start to fall apart badly.
Like our street was about 20 years ago it was done.
Our street was ever done?
Aldrich was
Yeah,
done
it was done.
early 2000s, I think,
Wow.
and it's getting bad again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting bad again.
There's your 18 years.
Yes, we've already patched a few sections of it up near
Yeah, by
Amherst
that
Street,
notice.
and,
Okay.
Dave, is your department looking for any capital purchases this year?
we put a couple things in. The sweeper is probably the oldest thing that we run right now. The rest of the equipment is in pretty decent shape. Our vehicles, except for those couple of diesel engines that we gotta do some proactive stuff on because there's a failure in the injection system prematurely, even though there's not very many miles on the trucks. That's probably the biggest item that we have on the horizon right now. And we've been doing more and more sweeping because now we have to do it twice a year based on the EPA regs. With Storm Phase 2, we've got to do all curb streets in the fall, as well as in the springtime sweeping for sand, so.
And also, I think the point you just made there, Dave, those are always good things to bring up at the town meeting, the reason why we need it. Like you said, there's been
Yeah,
changes in the
absolutely.
EPA requirements, and we have no choice, but this is what we need to do.
Yeah. Any other questions, or?
I had none. Rick?
I got that, no,
No?
Good.
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you,
All right.
good job.
All right, Mr. Carrier, you're up.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
So to see what was presented to you already, or just at a preliminary that was sent in by Mr. Martin, it doesn't include all of our budget numbers yet, because some of it doesn't include payroll and some of our contracted services. We're still actually waiting on some of the prices on them. A lot of them obviously are going up for contracts because, again, because of regulations, state laws, they're going up with the minimum wage. So a lot of companies are actually struggling right now to get each of their employees up to a rate that's going to be able to comply with what the law is asking for. So they're increasing it, especially with like cleaning companies and other general contracted services that are a regular monthly type of line item. This coming year, we're looking at other different contracts as well, looking at changing out some of our fire alarm contracts that we might have, trying to get change on those to a company that might better serve us, prices better in line as well. And some of the items too is because we have a lot of the systems in here that might be a little bit outdated, even for burglar alarms, we're looking at software updates. So we've been having a hard time trying to get some pricing on that. I don't know whether some of that is also because of the limit of getting equipment in. Materials right now, this year has been a real challenge, trying to get everybody to actually get us equipment that we need in. All we keep hearing is unprecedented times, and getting services in line is with that as well. We're looking at, as Dave said, because of paint shortages, staffing issues, and everything else, we're looking at getting pricing again updated to do some of the driveways and parking lots of the facilities, because they haven't been line marked in a while. The last time I did them was actually July of 2019. This property and the new library was done, and last year I ended up doing over at the police and fire department, did about 80% of the lines, but we did those all in-house, and we were just using inverted cans. It actually cost the town no money. We had a donation for those, so it was just some labor time to do it. But because of that, they're more of a latex-based product. They don't last this long. With sanding and salting and everything that we do, and the plowing, of course, it's going to wear out. Some of the cost increases that you may see on there, if we've added them all in again, and we're going to still be going over some, equipment repair and things like that. Costs have gone up dramatically on a lot of those. We also have equipment, the vehicle repairs, which of course, as you know, we've added a vehicle over the last couple of years. We do have 3 that we're using all the time that of course will need regular service to keep them in good working order. So just oil changes, tire rotations, and changing out tires. What we're looking at right now is probably have an average of like 3-year span on some of the tires on the trucks that we're using for sanding, just because of small confined spaces with turning in a tight radius. We're wearing front tires rather quickly, which I don't think could be avoided much there. Didn't know if you had any specific questions on any items thus far that we've submitted.
What are the flags?
So flags are what we put all down the main 202. Those will be on all the poles that go down there. There's 239 flags, I believe we're at right now. We have one at every one of our town properties as you go through. So like here at the annex, the old library, the new library, the police and fire department, and Brown Ellison Park will all have a 3x5 flag. A couple of the properties, and the rock at the common. And then we also will have 2 of the POW flags. So as they need replacement, we change them out. We just had about a 30% cost increase that was done by a regular supplier. So I've reached out to 4 other suppliers to see if we could get any type of a cost reduction from what we're currently paying. We are trying to get U.S. flags that are made in the United States. The only ones that we've come across that are cheaper aren't made in the United States, or they also have a different type of material, or the stars are more of they're kind of like painted on. They're not actually embroidered, and they'll probably fade out quicker. They're cheaper quality. As I was speaking with Jeff, actually, because he has to order flags for cemeteries and other places. He has some that he goes through for the convicts, the jails. They actually make flags and will sell. So we're looking at prices for things like that. Would be a good idea as well. But as I discussed with him, I actually got a couple in from another vendor of 3x5 flags that we use so many of them down 202. We put them on a steel pipe that is already drilled. So the holes, the grommets that I just got in a sample of from another company don't line up. So we'd be drilling again. When I took over this position in 2019, they just changed all the flags from 3x5s to 2x3s. So there were already 2 other holes there. And then the manufacturer actually changed the hole a little bit. So we could have anywhere from 4 holes already there to 6 holes. So then we're looking at the cost of it. If we change it again, we're gonna have to also change all these steel pipe. So we're adding another cost again. So again, I'm working with the supplier we have right now to try to do a cost reduction the best we can for this year. But everything in line with the way it's going right now isn't looking good because costs aren't going down at all or even stabilizing. They just keep rising.
They gotta replace every year, because they wear out.
No, not all of them.
Not all of
We actually have a good luck with the bend in town, as you're going up around the curve. We have about 30 to 35 in an area where they stay fairly shaded, so they don't fade as much, but yet they seem to dry. The wind is good enough where they don't keep moisture and get all mildew. I know that doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking, 239 flags,
Yeah.
but that's a help. And then towards the Belchertown line as well, there's a shaded area. So we're trying to minimize if we can save them, and, we take them down, we roll them up at the end of the year. They're all stored, in a dry spot right now and out of the sun, so they're not fading anymore. And that's what we do through the winter time, is a couple of us will actually go through them. We'll start taking off what we need to take off to get repaired, put a new one on. The other ones we can iron out, reband, and then set aside so they'll be put back up again.
And they're disposed proper.
Correct. We bring them down to the Legion, and the scouts actually will take care of them
Nice.
in a ceremony so that they're respectfully destroyed. This past year, we did have a lot of windstorm issues. We were called a lot of times. I actually have it in my reports of times I've had to go out and fix flags because they get wind ripped. Sometimes they'll actually go up over themselves, and there's different brackets that they'll put on the wires that are used for the cable and for phones, and sometimes they rip. So out of respect, we make sure we change them as soon as we can.
Waste removal services. So it looks like in the past 2 years, we haven't used what's been budgeted. And it has gone down this year. I mean, you're budgeting, went up $670. What's entailed under the waste removal?
Well, we have the dumpster services that are at each location. We also have the ones out here that are picked up in front of the building. The last couple of years, we haven't had as much trash that's been removed, and we've suspended some of the services along the year because Dufresne Park wasn't open fully. So we haven't had full trash pickup there. We also had the library and a couple of other areas that we were able to kind of have limited trash pickup as well because buildings aren't open as often. I don't know if you've heard, Mr. Martin, or not, if the prices are gonna be going up.
Yeah, they go up every year.
I mean,
No, I expect,
what they've gone up.
I expect them to go up.
But just so you know, Jen, we also pay for the school trash and recycling removal that we back charge them under the ed reform.
Yes,
Okay, so that's included in those numbers too.
correct. So I guess my question is, because we're only looking back to 2020, excuse me, to 2020, is that deficit, is that difference COVID related? So we budget 34,000, we only used 21,600 in 2020. That was pretty much, you're thinking COVID related because?
Right, I believe because of the reduction of use of buildings, it was
Okay.
probably dropped down. We also did have, believe we had some billing that we didn't have because some of the services were missed because of their fault of not being able to pick up on time. There might have been a week or two where we didn't have a dumpster removed, and then charges wouldn't be applied.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's where there would be a deficit there, but I'm not sure.
That was my only question.
You got any capital equipment you're buying that has to go in front of the town meeting?
Yes, as we had discussed before, and I know you, as a selectman, had asked me to bring forward the tractor that we
Yep.
talked about and the implements that would do the baseball, softball fields, would also be able to be utilized for some other services, so I brought that forward. Then we also looked at a tent-like structure to be able to put some of that equipment into, so that we don't have things out in the open. As you know, for my department that I'm in, we don't currently have a solid structure to put anything in that would fit. We do have the old garage behind the library, but that already houses, you know, some of our push equipment and other items. So we would need something larger that would be able to maintain it underneath cover so it's not rained on all the time, or in the wintertime snowed on. So that would.
You're
that would
talking
be
like
the area.
the tunnel-like garage
It
type?
is, yes, just exactly like what they have at the highway department now, which would be for their salt
Oh,
and
one of those.
sand structure.
Okay.
And it would actually be up, raised just like theirs on block. So it'd give a little bit more height if you had equipment that you needed to put in there. And it would be solid, so that way, you know, snow or anything else builds up on the side.
And
it'd
just
be
for ha-ha's
accessible.
sake, where are we gonna house that?
That's still in debate, but I believe we would be looking at the old library area as a one potential. We'd have to look for sure.
But if the Historic District Commission doesn't give us permission, then it'll probably be down at the old West Street School.
Let's see, why don't we just put in the West Street
That
School
was my
parking lot
question.
till, why don't we just put the stuff inside the West Street School?
It won't
Drive it
fit.
right in?
It won't fit. Some of it is too tall for the
Yeah.
doors.
The height of a lot of the items between rollover protective devices that are on them, most of them are fixed.
Too high.
So yeah, you can't. That's also the reason some of it won't fit into the old library garage, because we've taken measurements on most of those. Most need 102 inches, and we have about a 92 inch clearance, and that's with the maximum for the header to door.
Yeah.
We can't raise it.
So the fence, the tent you talk about, is that more of a temporary solution?
I would say so. It would get us through for a while until.
You would hope so.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, what's a while? I mean, should we be, as this department continues to grow, it seems,
I-
should we be looking at, down the road, looking at an area that would, maybe look at building a
Oh,
Garage.
definitely. I would
garage
look
or
at,
something like that to put all the equipment in? Because again,
Yes.
here we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment,
Yep.
and we wanna make sure that, that equipment lasts, because as the future comes, those things are not getting any cheaper.
no, I definitely agree on that, that we need to look at a property of where it would be feasible to do. And also house, I would say, house all the trucks that we use, not
Right.
just
Yep.
lawn equipment or any other type of utilitarian
But all
things. We need to
vehicles.
have all of it, yeah. We currently, as you know, through my reports, store our vehicles right now parked at the West Street School, so it's a well-lit area, it's all in one area, and we can kind of keep an eye on it. But it would be nice to have them undercover. It would be nice in the future to have a heated area. The sanding and salting application in the wintertime is a big concern, because it's nice to be able to have those loaded and ready to go prior to the storm event happening, because I also need to, if I don't, during the storm, I would need them loaded with sand and salt. The only way to do that would be to have someone from the highway department load us up. So if in the future we had a heated area, you could load that the day or the night before, store it in a nice heated garage. You don't have to worry about it clumping. The moisture content in the sand is what becomes a problem. It freezes with
It's so
salt.
long, it's moisture inside it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which then also causes more of a corrosion issue if you've got that sitting too long as well. But it's definitely something that I'd ask the board, or, maybe even the finance committee to maybe think about, look at, and see where we might be able to go with that too.
Again, I think it's, those are things that I think about where we, we need to continue to plan for the future.
Oh, definitely.
As Chris talked about a little earlier too, we talk about staffing and things like that, planning for the future. These are other things that we know we should be looking towards down the future, where it's, these are real things that we need to plan for. We should be, as a town, we should be forecasting out 5 years from now what we're gonna need to plan accordingly, so we can keep on moving forward, not, when it comes up, well, next year we should build a new building. No, we should be talking about things like that now.
Oh, yeah, it's like on our forms for the capital fund thing, where, you really would have like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year plan, so you can kind of step it up, ramp it as you need be. And the point you already brought up is things are not gonna get cheaper. There's not gonna be a magic wand out there and someone's gonna say, okay, we're gonna decrease it by 25% because now you need it. It really would be something to bring forward sooner than later on that. I think with a property as well, as like just even a location to start to talk about where we'd want to do it. As you know, when we've had that in the past, whether you're talking about library, the police department, fire department, it happened with highway as well. We'll shift it here, we'll shift it there. Needs to be adequate. You know, a lot of people would like to reduce department sizes or things, but then they want the services. So
Can't have both.
if we're gonna keep increasing, I mean, I'm seeing properties being built in town, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
But the need is gonna increase
Well,
for
with more
every
people,
department.
more
Yeah.
services are needed. No, I,
Well, as Dave said earlier, it doesn't matter if you have one car on the road or 50, you still have to do the maintenance for it,
Right.
you know?
What's your vision for size of building? Similar to the highway department?
I would say a little reduced from that, because we don't have
Lose a bay,
as
yeah,
many.
you know.
I was gonna say, you probably still need, almost the same square footage
Yeah.
for it. If you're gonna do maintenance on things there, or if you're gonna, again, if you've got the tractors and that, highway garage isn't adequate for what they have. I mean, I hate to say it that way too, but it'd be nice if theirs was almost
A little
30 to
bit
40% larger.
Yeah,
So that they don't have items out in the back stored where elements can hit them, and everything could be indoors.
right, no, it makes sense.
And again, at the time, it may have been adequate, but then as things grow, needs change,
That
and,
said, they
and
get
and regulations
we need to
change.
start
We,
using foresight here.
yeah, I mean, we've seen that with Dave and that, where, his DOT regs, even how they store some of their equipment has changed.
Yeah.
So it's something we really have to look at.
I got another question for you. I don't see anything on training for you and your staff, AKA like a Class A license.
No, I don't have anything on there.
Did you, I know you were looking at some books, you bought some books on your own, right? To try to get it?
I got them, yeah, but I didn't think with asking to be, bringing forward the tractor costs and things like that,
You're
I
gonna need
didn't
a
think that
trailer
was
to
gonna
pull the
be,
tractor around.
but I didn't know if that was gonna be anything, that would be looked at for us to get. I would always be willing if the select board wanted to have me move forward on something like that, to look into it and to do. Dave did mention earlier that that is something that you will have to go through classes now to get.
Yeah, I
From
hate that.
would be a
Change the
Class
law.
A.
Yep.
They changed it.
I think
Yeah.
looking forward, I think that's important for his department to have. You're gonna be lugging if those equipment around, you're gonna need a Class A license. Instead of bugging Dave to pull it.
No, there's
Well,
nothing-
the smaller tractor,
Yeah, not
we will
required,
legally
but-
be able to carry on the current one that we have with a Ford F-350.
Yeah,
Nothing-
Which is a good thing, because that way, also my department going forward, something happened, or 15 years down the road, I retire, and the younger gentlemen that are working, or the new people that come on, they wouldn't need the specialized license. They'd be able to do it under a Class D, the drivers, as long as they don't change the rules down the road, but.
Right.
That size and weight, we'd be adequate. The only thing is, with that size tractor, there's only 1 or 2 implements I can put on the trailer that we have at a time. So we will be limited to that. So if need be, what I'd have to do is, even with a smaller trailer in another vehicle, maybe put an implement on the smaller trailer, have that shipped to the location, take the trailer with the tractor and another implement on there, and switch out that location.
It's not so much the trailer size, it's the weight,
Correct.
the total ability of the weight.
Correct. Yep, well, once we get the length and the weight, yeah, the GVW, the gross vehicle weight, once we get over that, then that's when you come in a legal issue.
so would it be more efficient to have a larger trailer to get 2 pieces of equipment on to pull around town?
Well, it would, but, yeah, again, depends how you're looking at it. If you wanna go for that extra cost to a different trailer and a vehicle.
Well, even if you borrow from the
Looking-
highway department, right? Don't they-
Correct, if we were to use their tractor and their trailer, it would have to be a Class A. Which currently, they only have 2 people out of their department to have a Class A. So again, speaking of his future,
Yeah,
a couple of his gentlemen, or women if they get hired, may
Is it
wanna move
Class-
forward.
Class A or Class B for them?
They have Class Bs right now. You would need a Class A for the trailer that they have because of the gross vehicle weight that it's rated for. Even if you were to put a push mower on there and you're driving that with the
No,
right size
I
thing.
get that, that's what it's rated for, not what you have on it.
Yeah,
it's something we need to think about, I think.
Yeah, and they have Class Bs, all the other ones have
Yeah.
Class Bs, there's only 2 that have the Class A. So even then, I'm limited, like if I was to request somebody to bring it, should Dave or Russ not be in or unavailable, then
Then
it
you
wouldn't be
can't
able to
get
be
the
moved
project
either.
done.
Right.
So that's something for us to think about for the future.
That was, I thought, what was discussed too, because of why, even if I got the training, which I have gotten some of the training on the Bobcat, the skid steer, was that if I needed to use it, then I still wouldn't be able to just go get it, because it would have to be on the higher rated
Right.
trailer.
Right, they would have to bring it
Yeah.
for you to use it.
Yeah, and if they're tied up on a project, we're,
Yeah, which is very likely. I mean, they start early too, and once you're headed out, you don't wanna pack everything up to go, okay, let me go deliver something for you.
and you heard him, he's
But
done with
you're-
that.
Yeah,
I don't know what your lawn trailer holds, but there, I mean, you can have one that could tow a Bobcat, that you can tow,
right, there are, yeah.
yeah. This, I mean, I think if you're looking at the next, a newer trailer, is to
Yeah.
get a trailer that's size-wise what you need, but maybe get it right to the
Right to the
actual limit
maximum,
that
yeah,
you can,
yeah.
that you actually can carry with it without having the next, grade license. 'Cause
Yes,
it's
some of them
valuable,
are,
because anybody in your department can move it.
yeah, some of them are shorter,
Yeah.
shorter wheelbase that you put on there. and they-
Jeremy,
they can
I'm
hold
sure you
more.
researched it, but how much would the cost be to get a Class A with the
Um,
classes, do you know?
From the class I looked at, it was $6,200,
6,200 for one person.
one person.
Wow.
It's not cheap at all,
Yikes.
Wow.
not cheap at all.
2 years ago. A little cheaper. It's gone up because
Yeah, it was-
the requirements have gone up.
It was,
And it's probably only
it
gonna go
was
up again.
$4,000 when I looked into it in
Yeah.
2019.
They've changed some of the laws, the federal laws have changed over the past, probably 6 months.
Yeah, they really have.
Actually, some I think just took effect January 1st, I think, too.
Which I think a lot of it is great for the safety of the people on the road. I think some people are kind of skimming through a little bit, so, you know, it's terrible for the people that want to go out there, and it's bad for the industry, the truck drivers. One of the biggest components where I have right now when we're trying to get items is there's a yacht sitting on the other end of the country, and there's nobody to drive it over here.
Yep.
That's becoming a problem.
So if you had it, it would make both the Class A license I'm talking about, it would make your job easier to go, if you had a borrowed trailer from the highway department and they had one available. It would make them not lose a guy for a little while, you be able to pick it up and do your
Yeah,
job.
potentially it
Correct.
could.
That's all I have.
I'm,
Oh, good.
I'm good, yeah.
yeah,
Thank
good.
you for your
Thank you,
time.
Jeremy.
Thank you.
It's much appreciated. Do you have anything for us? Nothing? Do you have anything?
I do not.
Do you have anything?
I do not.
Does anybody have a motion?
I would make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.